this is the things that causes people to get mad and get upset. This is, because you think about it, we face. There's just no way for the average person to keep up with every rule and every regulation, and it's all the way from townships to cities to counties to state, and then federal.
Yeah, and they're all different.
I'm Scott Hess, tax and business consultant.
I'm John Barton, small business owner. Remember the tortoise and the hare? Slow and steady wins the race.
We started Turtlesmith to help people start small businesses, providing information and resources to small business owners and entrepreneurs.
Build a solid foundation and forge your dreams.
This is always annoying to ask, but if you're liking this content, please like and subscribe. It's the best way for us to get more followers and more people engaged in this great business content. You can also follow us on all socials at TurtlesmithOK and find us at turtlesmith.com.
Please like and subscribe.
What's up, man? Back for another one.
Yeah. That's first time I've had a chance to sit down in a couple days.
Yeah, just going all out on the new spot, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Well, what do you got for us this week, Calvin?
A little bureaucracy in business.
This kind man just wanted to help his 80-year-old neighbor, but the cops threatened to arrest him.
Aside, because if you get in my way, there's going to be problems. You understand?
I didn't break any laws. I just wanted to help someone who couldn't afford help. Today, I went to mow the lawn for an 80-year-old widow. She lives alone, on a fixed income, and her front yard had grown wild after weeks of heat and rain. She told me the city had already warned her. Clean it up or get fined. Thing is, she can't afford to pay the $300 the city charges to cut it, so I offered to do it for free. I'd barely gotten halfway through when 2 police cruisers pulled up, lights on, doors swinging open. One officer steps out and says, "You need to shut that mower off now." I was confused. Thought maybe they were checking in. But then he told me I was trespassing and under investigation for unauthorized property maintenance. I pointed at the lady standing on her porch, waving frantically. "She asked me to help," I said. "She gave me permission." They ignored her. One of them told me the yard fell under a municipal code that made it restricted property because of pending fines. The woman kept pleading, trying to explain, but they wouldn't listen. One officer handcuffed me right there in front of her. Turns out the local department offers a paid lawn service, and if neighbors or charities step in for free, they interfere with city business. I sat in the back of the cruiser, watching that poor woman cry on her porch. I wasn't charged. They let me go later with a warning. But they told me next time it would be a citation for disruption of municipal process. I'm going back this week to finish the job before they fine her, even if it means getting arrested again. If you want to hear what happens next, just type "stand up" in the comments.
What a ridiculous situation. So the city's making her clean it up. She finds somebody to help her clean it up. But then the city says that's not good enough because you didn't pay us to do it.
I mean, if his side of the story is what it is, yeah, but I mean, that's some of this shit is so unreasonable,
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, we're talking about, our topic this week is permits and all the regulations and the bureaucracy, and like things like this are just an example of just ridiculous overreach.
Yeah, that's crazy. Why would the cops show up?
Yeah, interfering in city business, and it requires a handcuff. They said he would give him a citation. So if the worst that could happen to you there is you get a citation, how does that require putting you in handcuffs?
Yeah, it does not. That cop seemed very aggressive at the beginning of that video too.
Yeah.
I don't get that. Overreach, I think is the term of that one.
Yeah, this is the things that causes people to get mad and get upset. This is, because you think about it, we face. There's just no way for the average person to keep up with every rule and every regulation, and it's all the way from townships to cities to counties to state, and then federal.
Yeah, and they're all different depending on where you're at.
There's a book out there, and I want to say it's called 3 felonies a day or 5 felonies a day or something like that. And the premise of the book is that the average American literally commits 3 felonies a day by being unaware of regulations.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah. And the book was about basically the federal government's overreach and how they control people by charging them, or threatening to charge them, and so they basically get settlements out of people by threatening to ruin their lives and ruin their businesses and so on. Like even if this guy had been arrested, taken to jail, then he's going to have to get a lawyer. He's going to have to,
deal with all the nonsense.
He's going to have to bond out, all this nonsense. And who pays for your freedom being taken away for 2 days for something ridiculous like this?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you have to pay for it.
I mean, so anyway, yeah, if we believe this side of the story, then yeah, but it sounds reasonable to me.
It's interesting to me, though, that book would say we break 3 felonies a day. I wonder how common they are. Like, I love reading old statutes of like things like you can't chew gum on the sidewalk on Sundays in this township or something, because in 1780 they decided that was no good.
There are a lot of laws still on the books that aren't enforced, but they're still live and people could enforce them. I mean, our current president is reaching all the way back to like 1800.
Yeah, he's really going for it.
Yeah.
He's going for it. All right, what's the next one, man?
Dozens of other medical marijuana dispensaries are shut down tonight after missing the state's deadline for licensing. But many owners say they should have received that state license months ago. 7 Action News reporter Alan Campbell tells us the controversy is leaving some people who use medical marijuana out in the cold.
More than 24 medical marijuana dispensaries are now shut down in Metro Detroit, like here at Holistic Health Wayne, after the state licensing board denied their license. Now, all they can do is wait and see when they'll be approved.
If you're going to open any of them, this is the place that needs to be open, right here.
More than 70 unlicensed state medical marijuana dispensaries are shut down as of December 31st.
Those dispensaries that have been operating under that temporary authorization have to get a state license in order to continue to distribute marijuana.
The temporary operators have been given approval from the cities they're established in, however, are still waiting on state approval.
The applications still haven't come up yet at the Marijuana Licensing Board, and others have been simply denied.
Patients who visit their regular dispensary are now left looking for answers.
I'm forced to find meds elsewhere, an undesirable, probably not a safe location.
I thought we were all set when we did this voting, and apparently not. I don't understand it.
Some fear patients will resort to other ways to get their medical marijuana.
Probably have to revert to the black market or to the caregiver system.
Now, medical marijuana dispensaries that serve thousands of clients are in the dark, waiting for the marijuana board to give them the green light, while patients take the risk of going somewhere else, somewhere they're not sure of.
There's so many cancer patients that come here for Rick Simpson oil, and now they have nowhere to go. So there's actually people that are dying that have nowhere to go for their medication.
Temporary medical marijuana dispensaries had to apply for a state license back on February 15, 2018. After speaking with some owners of a dispensary, they say they're losing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars for being shut down. Reporting in Wayne, I'm Alan Campbell, 7 Action News.
This is a good example of the kind of ridiculous non-communication between the federal, state, and local governments, because it sounds like they got a license approved by the local government, but then they now have to get a state license, and if that's not approved, they had to close their doors.
And apparently it was something where they all had state licenses, but then there was some other rule that,
right,
so yeah. And again, not only is it a communication issue, but it's also a power issue,
Really, yeah.
Sometimes you have cities that want to do something and the state says no, and then you have state says you can do something and then the city says no.
Yeah, it's a disaster of just non-communication between the different.
Yeah, I had a plumbing issue, right? And I called I passed by a plumber. I called him up and I said, I have a house over in Midwest City, which is just across the city, and he said, well, I'm not licensed to practice in that city, right?
Yeah.
And I was like,
even though it's all in the Oklahoma City Metro.
Yeah, it's in the Oklahoma City Metro, but I was thinking to myself, don't you have to get like a state license to be a plumber? If you've got a state license, shouldn't that allow you to be a plumber anywhere in the state?
Yeah, I mean, it should, but it doesn't. Yeah, the whole licensing thing is ridiculous. I have to help clients here with the OMMA, the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority, and everything they do is just ridiculous. And then every time they come up with some new statute, you have to get all this new documentation, and then it takes them 90 days to approve it, and then you get rejected. I don't think I've ever got an application in on the first try. It's always taken at least 3 or 4.
I mean, that's one thing that's kept me from really pursuing getting into the medical marijuana industry, because I'm afraid of not only Oklahoma but all these other states that are they just constantly change their regulations.
Yeah, and whether you're a pro cannabis fan or not, it's ridiculous that if all these states are legalizing it, why aren't we just federally legal? Why don't we make a better set of rules nationwide?
Well,
than all these states messing around.
Yeah, especially since if I understand it correctly, to legalize it, you basically just take it off Schedule 1, right?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a little more to go to it, but yeah, that would definitely be the first step. Right now, they're talking about taking it from Schedule 1, which is the same as like heroin,
right,
down to Schedule 3, which that would help a lot of regulations.
Which is, another thing, the way they write these things and the rules and everything, that Schedule 1 is basically where there's no medical use for the drug.
Yeah, it's just a narcotic.
However, there are drugs that are like heroin, opiates that are used in, pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
So clearly there's a medical use.
Yeah. The whole thing is just a ridiculous situation. But the licensing behind it is bananas. Here in Oklahoma, you have to have the OMMA, and then you also have to deal with the OBNDD, and then you deal with all these catch-22s, like you have to have this license before that license, and you have to make sure everything's working together. And there's so many of my clients who have either been shut down or had to like cut all their plants and start over. It's been a disaster.
I imagine it's horrendous. You know that we're going through it now with the with the building and the new business and everything and all the licenses we have to get for that. I have to get 4 permits to hang up a hood vent over the grill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the same thing happened to me here at our shop. We had opened in the back. One of my friends wanted to open a cannabis processing, and I had extra space. So we built out a kitchen, got all the health permits, got all the licenses that we needed, and we were operating. And then the state decided that they needed a certain certificate of compliance to do this cannabis processing. And the city decided that they didn't want it, not in the city, just in my little strip, in my building.
Which is literally ridiculous, because
Yeah.
you can walk 2 minutes down here to a dispensary. You can walk 3 minutes that way to a dispensary.
Well, and I can throw a rock at a building that one's okay. That one is zoned properly. And I
like
can
literally across the parking lot.
Yeah. We spent, I don't know, $150,000 or something like that, building this out, getting the hood vent in, getting all the fire suppression and all the stuff we needed. Everybody was happy. I asked the city if we were good. They said yes. We talked to the county health board. They said we're great. OMMA said we were great. And then all of a sudden they're just like, nope.
If a city says that you're great and you've got that in writing, and then they decide to rezone it, then they should pay you for that.
They should, or we should have been grandfathered in or something. But they just, they said no dice.
It's crazy how easy that is. You just have a couple bureaucrats or a couple local city council members or whatever, and it might come down to just one person, like nine city council members, 5-4 vote, one person wipes out who knows how much, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in investment.
Yep.
Yeah,
it costs
and
me
you're
a
talking
fortune.
about small businesses too. So this is not like, it's not like a tiny fraction of a corporation's profits or
no,
money.
I felt it. Yeah,
it
hurt.
I'm sure you did.
Yeah. When they make these decisions, they hurt a lot of people. So
yeah,
I just think they need to think a little better. And I think that the communication between local, state, and federal needs to be better, because all these rules and regulations conflict with each other and they don't work.
Yeah, and then on top of that, it's hard to find out things, like going back to my hood vent situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
I said to my GM, hey, let's just go find out exactly what we need to do.
Yeah.
Right? Do you know that it's impossible? This is not hyperbole. It is impossible to find out the exact parameters of installing a hood vent in Oklahoma City for a restaurant.
Why is that now? It's impossible?
Yes. As far as I can tell, it's impossible, because you can't find it on any government website. You can't find it anywhere else. You can find a lot of suggestions. Well, it should be sort of this or should be sort of that, but nowhere is it concrete. The clearest thing that I can find is the Oklahoma City website says, we follow the National Fire Protection Board or whatever, whatever their guidelines are. And then if you go and you try to find out what their guidelines are, they want to sell you a book for a couple $100. So it's not impossible. I guess it costs you money, but I don't know. I still don't know if I bought that book, if it would actually have that in there. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I've said this before on the podcast. I have grand plans of Turtlesmith eventually being able to have a lot of this information available to people, especially like what licenses you need. But the more we get into it, the more difficult that task seems to be able to complete.
You know what, though?
It seems almost insurmountable, but we're going to work on it.
It does seem crazy, but if we became the sort of like the go-to place for that sort of stuff, if someone asked a question like we see on Reddit and things like that, and the answer on Reddit was, well, did you check Turtlesmith?
Yeah.
Then we will have made it.
That's the win.
But
when some commenter in Reddit says check Turtlesmith.
Yeah, I mean,
we know we've made it.
I wanted to build a billiard super site once,
Mm-hmm.
right? Once upon a time. I still do actually, but that website would be super proactive about going out and finding information. We would have every pool room in the country. We'd have down to how many pool tables they have, what their menu is, everything, right? All the tournaments, the tournament results. But that would require a lot of proactivity on our part, going out and
a lot
getting
of data
that
collection.
information. Yeah. And it would require also a lot of people participating and making sure that information was kept up.
Yeah.
So now you take that and you go like, universal size with all the regulations for every municipality, every state, every county. Yeah, I mean,
it becomes a nightmare.
Yeah.
That's why you need attorneys. Like you saw in that video, they had the cannabis legal group. You almost have to have an attorney to just get anything done, just so you know what you have to do.
Yeah, but and one thing is even the attorneys have a hard time keeping up with it.
Yep. Yeah, even they make mistakes. Well, this is a fun question I found on Reddit. You want to read it? It's what is a catch-22 you've experienced in life? And this was one of the responses.
Okay. I experienced the most complicated catch-22 I've ever seen when we were dealing with people building our house. Let's see if I can remember all the parts. The bank couldn't approve a construction mortgage loan without plans from the builder. The builder couldn't provide the plans without an easement guaranteeing rights to the shared side of the property. The county wouldn't approve the easement, or maybe the lawyer wouldn't write up the easement without an up-to-date survey on the property. The county couldn't perform an up-to-date survey without an up-to-date title on the property. The lawyer couldn't perform the title search without something from the county records department. I never fully understood what. The county records wouldn't provide that without proof that I own the property, which I didn't yet, because the bank hadn't approved the construction mortgage loan. It took 5 months to iron the whole mess out. The most frustrating thing about it, no one will actually talk to anyone else. They all insisted on going through me. Yeah, I have been through a couple of these myself.
Yeah. And you have to waste all your time talking to all these people. And you had to talk to them multiple times.
Yeah, you have to talk to them multiple times. And then when you do that, it's like a giant game of telephone because you're trying to remember what one person said to you. You're relaying it to the other person. The other person's like, well, I don't think it's that way. You need to go talk to them again, right? And it just goes back and forth, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
There's no central clearinghouse for this stuff.
No. And every time I think of this, I always think of you ever see that Parks and Rec show with Ron Swanson, the libertarian
I've seen some
guy?
episodes.
He just says, I'm going to butcher the quote, but it's something along the lines of, I have a bushel of apples. Here, you can buy this. That's how complicated it should be to start a business in America. Yeah. You make the apples, you sell the apples, that's it. Why does the government need to be involved in all of these things? It's ridiculous.
I mean, they say laws are there, to curb the bad human behavior. And I feel like sometimes it's kind of like the lawn darts thing, like if you remember, I think like maybe 3 people got hurt or maybe a person died from the lawn darts.
Yeah.
And now none of us can have lawn darts anymore because nobody else gets to be trusted. Out of the millions of people that bought them and used them, right? 3 people got hurt and then everybody can't use them anymore. So a lot of this stuff I feel is somebody somewhere did something that probably wasn't great, and they made a rule or a regulation, and now everybody is hurt by it because most of the people are not doing that thing.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you that the reason we have laws is to stop shady people from doing terrible things. But you were just dealing with the deal on your bathroom where you're having to redo the whole plumbing and stuff. You thought you hired a reputable company. They maybe didn't have the proper licenses and stuff. And now you're just finding out. Like, why is it on you to have to do those due diligence to find out if they have the proper insurance?
Why can't I send the police?
And stuff like that. Yeah.
Like, why is that not considered theft, for example? We just see a video where the police show up and put a guy in handcuffs for freaking mowing a lawn.
Yeah.
Right?
Which at best is
why
a
can't
civil
I
issue.
call the police
Right.
and say a contractor robbed me by not installing things correctly in my thing?
Yeah.
And why don't the police show up there and say, you owe this guy $20,000 or you're going to jail?
Yeah, because then it becomes it's not a criminal issue; it's a civil issue. So you got to sue them. You got to go to court.
Yeah, but why is
so to get your $20,000 back, you got to spend $25,000.
Here's my thing on that, right? If the guy would have come to my house and just stole $20,000,
then it's a criminal matter.
But if he comes to my house and promises to do something for $20,000 and then doesn't do it, now it's a civil matter. That's
Right.
ridiculous.
Yeah, it's
if
absolutely
this shit
crazy.
was criminal, then I bet you we'd have a lot less shady people because they know they can get away with it. They know that most people are, number one, they may never discover it, or by the time they discover it, a lot of time has passed.
Yeah.
But they also know that even when it is discovered, it's too much of a hassle to go after it. People just chalk it up to whatever, and you can't even get a guy put out of business.
Yeah.
We come across this a lot in billiards, right? There's a lot of shady cue makers out there. People who just, buy a lathe, start taking money, they get behind, then the cues that they do deliver are shit. People complain, and there's just no way to put these guys out of business. Why not? Why can't it be that, like, if you get 10 complaints or 10 legitimate complaints to your local police station or your local DA, you're out of business. You sell one more cue after that moment, you're going to jail.
Yeah.
Why can't it be something like that? We had a guy in town, a pool player. I'm not going to name his name, but he was a guy going around doing like driveways and pavement and stuff like that, and he went to jail. He actually went to prison for overcharging old people.
Oh yeah.
So apparently, it was like a
Somebody
drive.
actually got in trouble?
Yeah, let's say a driveway job cost like $3,000 or $4,000, and he might charge him $10,000, right? Get the money, but then he went a step further and never did the work.
And if he had just done the work, it would have been fine.
Yeah, if he'd have just started the work, like drop off
Even
a
if he
bag
did
of
a
asphalt,
crappy
he probably
job.
would have been okay.
Yeah. See, that's ridiculous to me. And it seems like a lot of these rules and laws too are in place. I get their meaning, but really they just cause people who are trying to do the right thing more headache than actually protecting the public.
Absolutely, because all the guys that do it right, they have to go get all these licenses. They have to make sure that they are bonded and insured and everything, and they're competing against the people that aren't.
The other thing they really need is somewhere where it's easy to look up people's licenses.
Absolutely.
They need to have some kind of database where you can easily search a company, or even that the company could provide the link on their website to show that they're like fully bonded and insured.
100%. A guy shows up at your house to give him a quote. The first thing you say is, "What's your license number?" And you can just easily look it up in 2 minutes and know whether he's good or not.
You know what the craziest thing is in my business, in a tax and accounting, you don't have to have anything. You can just hang your shingle out and start
you
preparing
said that last
people's
week.
taxes.
That was surprising to me.
It really is, isn't it? Like, you don't actually have to have anything. You don't have to have a degree in accounting. You don't have to have any experience. You don't have to have anything. You can just open an accounting firm. Now, if you fraudulently do people's stuff and eventually you'll get in trouble with the IRS, or if you do things incorrectly, they'll eventually catch up to you. But the IRS is slow.
But if you do it correctly, you could just go forever, right?
Correct. Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah, but you don't need any kind of
That is so
proof.
nuts to me that you can literally handle accounts worth millions of dollars and not have to have any sort of public license or certification or anything.
Well, now Savvy business guys who do make that kind of money, they will often ask, like, are you this or that? And you have to tell them the truth. But like, I've never been asked for my degree or my resume or anything like that. I just have a shop. People come in, they trust me. And then you'll see during tax time too, when you're driving around, you'll see little deals out there that says, one child guaranteed $5,000 return. And those are just false companies. Those are guys who set up shop. They take a percentage of your taxes and as payment, and then you're going to get left holding the bag if they audit you. And that guy's gone. Sets up for a couple months during tax season. He's in the next city.
Why isn't it that any police officer driving by anything where he sees a sign like that is not immediately knows that is probably a criminal enterprise, and the very next day the state or whatever sends out a tax policeman or something, to take care of it?
They 100% should be, but they're too busy writing you a ticket for running a red light.
Or writing me a ticket for mowing a person's lawn.
Right, yeah, that's what they're spending their time on.
Put me in handcuffs for that.
Yeah, that's what they're spending their time on. Well, here's a couple other questions from Reddit. These are two very similar ones, but the first one, just figure out what licenses you need, by a guy named Franks for the Memories. I'm struggling to figure out what licenses and permits I need to start my business. The government websites are hard to navigate, and the language is often written with legal language I don't fully understand. Is there an easier way to go about this? And then another person in another subreddit, Electrical Curve, asks almost an identical question. Why is it so complicated to start a business? I see people talking about how it is just file an LLC at the bare minimum to get started, but I must be doing something wrong because there's a lot of hurdles. The LLC licensing fees, and then does he need a surety bond, attorney, insurance? The licenses are crazy, and he's in California, which they are wild in California with licenses. And he's got a relatively small business, so he doesn't understand why he has to do all this, or she has to do all this. So both these questions are just, where is this information and where can I find it? And I wish I could say it's on Turtlesmith, but it's not. There's some information, especially about an LLC, but the amount of licenses that you need, especially in states like California, where the municipalities and the counties and the cities get crazy, is just unfathomable. And it's hard to figure out.
Especially when there's so much conflicting information out there. And there are a lot of these LLC shops out there. I used one when I started, and I had a registered agent in Tulsa and all this. And
all a scam. Either do it yourself or hire an attorney. Do not do the LLC online for free thing. They're charging you for nothing.
Well, mine wasn't free, but
Well, yeah, or for $500.
I mean, I will say this: there are probably some of them on there, and correct me if I'm wrong, but because the one I was with, they did send me an email every year and say you need to do your annual meeting, you need to make sure you file this, you need to re-up this or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think that they were, doing it the right way, even though that's all they were providing.
Well, that's good.
There was no financial advice with that, but they were at least trying to keep me compliant. Mm-hmm. Now we have the thing with the LLC, by the way, folks out there listening, is you have to file a beneficial ownership form.
You don't have to. You don't have to do that anymore.
Oh, now you don't.
Yeah,
See, there's the government right there.
I spent like 3 weeks trying to get a bunch in, and I during tax season took like 3 days off to just file a bunch of those because I thought we were going to have to file them. And then the day of the deadline, they said, "Well, we're only going to make foreign companies do this now, with foreign owners."
God, I'm going through that shit with the tariffs right now. It's like one day it's 400,000% tariffs. The next day it's going to be 400%. Then it's like maybe they won't be on at all. Maybe they will be.
No. The other thing that they could do, and I just got this idea because Calvin's typing in here, what are all the different licenses? But maybe a cleverer idea is just to have like one license, like for everything. Like you just have a regular general business license. And then it has little addendums on those business licenses, like if you're in a certain industry.
Oh, I think that's kind of what they have, right? I mean, you have to register as some sort of company, right? So there's some kind of business registration, right?
You don't have to do that for like most businesses. You don't have to do anything. You don't even have to set up an LLC or any of that. An LLC is nothing to do with taxes or anything like that. It's just a legal entity. So like if I wanted to start selling stuff online, like if I was buying stuff at antique stores and selling it on eBay or something like that, no license required. If I want to set up my tax shop here, no license, anything required.
Not even from the city or anything?
Nothing.
Wow.
I can just set up shop, start doing
What
my
about
thing.
a sales tax permit?
So if you meet the physical nexus or the economic nexus in certain states, you have to have a sales tax permit. But if you're under that sales number, they're never going to come and bother you. Yeah.
Well, okay.
You
but,
don't. No,
but
no.
They're never going to come and bother you.
You don't
means
owe
that-
it. You don't owe the sales tax, and they're not going to come bother you about it.
So wait a minute. You're saying that if I were sitting there, if I were selling ice cream on the street right there, and I was selling below a certain amount, I would not have to collect sales tax?
So if you're doing like a little deal like that, not really. But if you have a physical nexus, so if you're selling stuff on the street, that's considered a physical nexus. So yes, you would have to collect sales tax. But like for JB Cases, you sell nationwide. We don't have to pay sales tax to every single state that you sell in because you don't meet the economic threshold and you're not in that state.
Okay.
And now that you have your new spot with JB Cases, now we have sales tax in Oklahoma because you have a physical presence.
Makes sense.
But if you're doing stuff online, or like in Oklahoma, there's no taxes on services. So since I don't have to charge sales tax on my preparation of taxes because there's no
sales tax on services. So I could literally like sell a case for $10 as the good and $300 as the advice.
And you might get in a little trouble for that.
Why?
That's fraudulent because that's knowingly selling it for a different way. In a different way. Yeah.
Knowingly selling it for a different way?
Sorry, that was probably the poor statement. That is knowingly being fraudulent in collecting lower sales tax. But sales tax is not the killer because sales tax you're just collecting from your customer and then paying it to the state. It's not your money. So sales tax is not a big deal, but the other licenses and stuff.
And now we're back to Ron Swanson's thing, right? You have an apple here.
Yeah,
I have an
yeah.
apple. I want to sell an apple. I have a pool cue case. I want to sell a pool cue case. Who's to tell me what I'm allowed to sell it for?
I mean, you can sell it for whatever you want.
That's what I'm saying, right? I mean,
but you can't sell a product for $1 and then sell advice. What advice are you giving that's worth $399?
I'm consulting them on the coloring. No, I mean, you know what I'm saying is like it sounds a little ridiculous, right? And it's a way around it, but well, I don't know that it's a way around it, but the point is why shouldn't it be a way around it? If for example there are no sales taxes on services, right?
Right. Well, that's just for the state of Oklahoma and other states.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying why do I have to pay a sales tax? Like I spent time and effort to build something, right?
Right.
Now I have a physical something that I'm selling to someone, and the state says, well, you need to collect a tax on that and give it to us, right? But if I spend the same amount of time and effort to acquire knowledge, and then I impart that knowledge to someone,
correct,
right, for the same amount of money as I sell the case for, and now I don't have to collect a sales tax on it. That doesn't seem right.
You're making a very reasonable argument, and I've never seen a reasonable argument defeat bureaucracy. So I don't know what to tell you on that.
That's the best one I've never seen. All right, what else do we have? So here's the thing. The question Calvin typed in are, what are all the licenses required to start a business in Oklahoma? That is an impossible question to answer.
It is.
Because, it would depend on the type of business. You want to be a hairdresser, you need 2,000 hours, first of all. Then you need a license to
you need
do
more
that. You need a
more
cosmetology license. And
you need more experience and licenses to cut hair than you do to file taxes.
yeah, no, it's ridiculous, right? And so yes, you have all of these. Then it depends on not only the state, right? But you're not going to be doing business in the state and not be doing business, also doing business in a county and a city and a municipality, So therefore, it's not only all the state licenses you have to have all the licenses for each of those entities. And God forbid if you break any of them.
Yep.
Or don't get it.
Yeah, it's all a disaster. And there is just no easy way to figure it out. I even tried the other day ChatGPT just to see if it would come up with the right answer. And it just pulled up the top 3 or 4 Google answers, and it was marginally correct, but enough that if you didn't, it missed a couple things that if you're in certain industries, you would have gotten in trouble.
Yeah, well, I mean, part of that has to do with what information are the AIs trained on.
Mm-hmm.
They're trained on the same amount of ridiculously complicated and incorrect, all over the map information that we can find ourselves, right?
Yep.
They just have more of it, and then when they spit it back out, it doesn't know whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah. My best advice if you're trying to figure out what licenses and stuff that you need is actually not to Google too much. It's just to go down to the city. Like when we were opened up shop in Del City, I just went to the city hall and I said, what do I need? And there was a nice lady who helped me out.
That seems to be the best way to do it. But you would think that all of these cities, you would think that every government office in this country would have a corresponding website that has a version of a nice old lady that says, here is all of the stuff you need.
Yeah. And after spending many times navigating the Oklahoma one, I still only know part of that. But all the other states, I mean, even though they're similar, they're all a disaster. It's hard to find the right information on the websites.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
And I've been doing this for 15 years now, helping businesses get started here in Oklahoma, and I maybe only know half of what I should know on the rules.
I would be surprised if there's anyone who knows everything that you need to know.
Yeah, I mean, it would be wild.
I even spoke with the property attorney the other day who does commercial leasing and everything, and even with 30 years of experience, he was very clear to say to me, I'm fairly sure that this is the way it will go, but I'm not completely sure.
Really? After 30 years?
Yeah.
I think this is it, but I don't really know.
Yeah, I mean, he's like, well, anything could happen, but,
Yeah. Yeah, I get that a lot here, too. People ask me, like, very specific tax questions, and I'm like, well, I think it's this, but I actually need to look it up, and then I can find the rule. That's mostly what you learn in taxes is how to look up the certain tax law.
That's why I like doing Q cases, right? Because that's one thing I can be an expert in. I get told off a lot online when I argue with people about politics. They're like, well, go back to making Q cases, they say. Right?
Well, yeah, but you are an expert in making Q cases.
That's right.
I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
But now you have to be an expert on Chinese U.S. Import laws and tariffs and everything like that.
It happened to me one time.
Things that you have to become an expert on are crazy.
Right. Long time before this, right? Long time. This was like, over 20 years ago. So if there's a statute of limitations on it, I hope it's run out. But I was importing pool cue cases that I didn't make. Another factory made them, but I was helping a guy out to get into the market. And I'm importing them as pool cue cases under using the regular harmonized tariff code that corresponds. And out of the blue, Customs sends me a bill for like $20,000 that they want for this shipment.
Oh yeah, we talked about it. And this is where they said they were luggage instead of.
They said it was luggage instead of a Q case, right? So not only do I get this surprise bill, and now I can't get these goods unless I pay it, right? But they want to. Not only do they do that, they decide to go 3 shipments backwards, so 4 shipments in total, and charge me. And it wasn't $20,000; it was $15,000. So it was a total of $60,000 that they just decided to assess.
Yep.
That I would have had to pay. So I was able to pay for the first shipment and get those cases in, but I owed them $45,000, which I just never paid them. I was like, you know what? Come after me.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, I never got another bill or any more harassment out of it or anything. So maybe they're still looking for me. I don't know.
They're still on the hunt for. Was it John Barton at the time?
John
or one of your
Collins
other aliases?
It was John Collins.
You're good, man. You've changed your name enough times. You're in the clear.
Yeah. If the FBI can't find me, neither can Customs.
Oh, well, any other final thoughts on licenses and permits besides that they're just a disaster in general?
Yeah, I mean, I know. My only thought is I guess take the time. We've talked about this in the business development.
Yep. We have a whole phase on or step on just licenses.
And it's tedious, it's crazy, and you're going to do your best, and you should do your best to find out all the licenses that you need. You need to be super organized or have somebody assisting you who's super organized about this. And you're probably still going to miss some. There's probably still going to be an inspector come around or somebody come around and say, oh, you didn't comply with this license or that license. Just be prepared for that and, do your best to roll with it and just try to comply.
Yeah. All those little things, they just cost you extra money.
Yeah.
They usually won't shut you down as long as you're trying to do the right thing, but you got to have a little extra money in the budget for those mistakes.
There is one kind of a silver lining here with this. Is once you have complied with all licenses, you're opening a new business, you've complied, you've done everything, in most cases, you won't see anybody come around and try to inspect or do anything or look for anything, for years, because there's just not enough of them.
Yeah, unless they get a complaint.
So don't. I'm not advising you to do anything illegal or out of compliance. I'm just telling you that you should try to comply with as much as you can. And if you somehow end up out of compliance for something, maybe they change the zoning law or something like that or whatever, then if you don't know about it, just wait until somebody shows up.
Yeah. Yeah. My best piece of advice on the licensing stuff is, first step is do your best to look on the state and local government websites, try to figure out kind of what you need. And then second step should always be to go down to the city, ask somebody down there, play dumb, but be very polite, and you will probably get all the information that you need. And the best part about that is if you get a name and you say, Mary told me this is what I needed, I think I'm in compliance, and somebody's like, no, you're out of compliance. Well, it's not your fault because somebody at the city told you. And then the next step, if you can afford it, we always suggest talking to a lawyer and an accountant. They will definitely be able to help you out.
I think that's really solid advice. So
yeah, that's the best way to tackle the licensing issue, is just don't ask on Reddit like these people do, because you'll get wild answers. And
never buy property. Yeah, never buy property without getting a proper inspection. Because one of those things is that a proper inspection tells you what's wrong with the place and also helps you to figure out whether the place is in compliance or needs to be in compliance.
That's true. Yep, absolutely. Well, I think that's it for this week, man. It was a good one. Find us on turtlesmith.com and at turtlesmithok on all our socials, and we'll see y'all next week.
All right. And remember, no mowing while doing charity work.
Right? Yeah, or you'll get cuffed.
Yeah. I can't believe that.
Me neither.
This is a crazy world.
This is always annoying to ask, but if you're liking this content, please like and subscribe. It's the best way for us to get more followers and more people engaged in this great business content. You can also follow us on all socials at Turtlesmith OK and find us at turtlesmith.com.
Please like and subscribe.